Good morning, class. 75 years ago to this day, the Krauts officially surrendered to the Allied powers, thereby bringing the European theater of the Second World War to its close. Now, this three-quarter century mark is indeed a milestone worthy of commemoration. However, that does not necessarily mean that we should be reliving it. No, I do not specifically mean to cite the prevailing ideas that the White House is the new Reichstag, or that outright is the Fourth Reich, or any of these other current notions detailing parallels in fascistic tendencies, applicable, though such comparisons may well be. No, boys and girls, today's lesson will be focused upon something which is much more latent, and which, in that sense, is almost more troubling than overt, dogmatic belligerence. It is something which you see and hear everywhere as of late, and yet I wonder how many of us have made the connection. It could be global, but especially ever since World War II, it seems to be uniquely American. Have you in recent days heard the expression, the front-line workers? The people up at the front. Everyone up on the front. You do recognize the origins and connotations of that phrasing, don't you? So many similar figures of speech have long since become adapted into mainstream conversational usage that you scarcely even notice them anymore, much less give them any thought, and yet there they are, just the same. These are military terms, and they figuratively and yet literally delineate an us versus them presence of an enemy which must be conquered. The war on drugs, the war on crime, the war on poverty. You've heard it all before. And yes, indeed, there are entire generations out there who would ask, yeah, well, so what? What's wrong with that train of thought? What's the harm, especially if it accomplishes some good? Believe me, I understand those generations, and I fully comprehend their willingness to uphold such a frame of mind. I truly do. But here again, this is also not the point of today's lesson. To delve into this, we will have to go all the way back to the beginning, and we will do so by way of a luminary who all of you hold so dear, one Tyler Durden, late of Fight Club. I have never read the Chuck Palahniuk book, but I have seen the film. And in this film, as you will no doubt recall, Tyler Durden addresses an underground room filled with the youth of the lost generation. In essence, he was speaking to all of you. And Tyler Durden points out, all too accurately, that none of you has tasted of the Great Depression, nor of the Big World War. And therein is the line of division. All of those militaristic schools of thought do not translate to your generation. They can't. They never did. And because of this, when that mentality is imposed upon you anyway, in order for it to work at all, it must be implemented with subtlety. And even then it falls short. because it rings false. Make no mistake, 75 plus years ago, in President Roosevelt's time, the rallying cry of, "We do our part," did work, because it was true. That solidarity did exist, and in many ways, it was a beautiful thing. We are all in this together. Many a true word. It was only in that post-World War II American hubris that the solidarity began to corrode and then erode. So much so that all those years later, when September the 11th rolled around and was repackaged and presented to you as the new Pearl Harbor, and it was clearly time to reignite that red, white, and blue Patriots bandwagon, it didn't work. Oh, they tried. How they tried. Office of Homeland Security. Homeland Security. Gosh and golly, doesn't that sound so nostalgic, so reminiscent of yesteryear? Puts you in mind of war bonds and Rosie the Riveter, of block wardens and air raid shelters, of rubber drives and ration books, newsreels and rolling bandages for the Red Cross. Yes, very nostalgic. And as I say, it didn't work. Nobody's buying it. Not now. And yet, here it is, still being propagandistically propagated. Only this time, the enemy is an unseen virulent virus, the sound defeat of which can only be achieved by the War Council and its Commander-in-Chief. Which brings us back to Tyler Durden's original assessment. Because you had no great war, no great, big, interesting, exciting thing like that happening in your lives, because you had no WWII, and instead only had a W, and now an outright imposter, this epidemic is the closest thing to an all-consuming conflict which you will have had, posing as such a historic challenge to your life and your lifestyles. Oh, to be sure, this will be something to tell the grandkiddies about someday. I'm not looking to spoil that for you. I am simply asking you not to allow yourselves to be used, to be politically manipulated by these decaying social strategies which are designed not only to ensure compliance via scare tactics, but to jumpstart your support of those in power by compelling you to believe that in doing so, you are showing solidarity and unity. You can be a true patriot without buying into any of that rhetoric. Indeed, you will be a truer, healthier, safer, and more meaningful patriot if you don't. We will now close by proofreading and correcting this mail-in homework which someone seems to have slipped into our classroom. Quote, in quote, parenthetical, irrelevancy,
Coronavirus, virus of the crown, mixed metaphor, omission of punctuative period, addition of conjunctive preposition. There.
There. Overall, I am pleased, although I was disappointed in the margins. Class dismissed.